Hi team, you know what it is. We are back with another dose of that high strength spiritual bleach to burn through those common and persistent blockages to awakening. These common barriers that we find on this journey to awakening, this path to enlightenment, this process of finding inner peace. And we know that there is no actual blockage there. What manifests as an apparent seeming blockage is actually a trick of perception. What appears to be a blockage is most often just one of two things. One, a gap in our knowledge. And this appears to be a blockage because, just like an electrical current going through a wire, if there's a break in the wiring, the current cannot pass through. So the gap in the knowledge is like that gap in the wiring that prevents the current from passing through it, right? So that would appear, if you were the current, let's do that little thought experiment. If you were the electrical current and you had the ability to perceive and you had the same sort of cognitive faculties as a human being, when you hit that gap, it would appear to be a blockage, right? There's something impeding your progress, but it's actually just a gap in the wiring. Now, somebody pointed out, and rightly so, and very intelligently so, that if the current is strong enough, it can actually arc over that gap. If the power is strong enough, the current has enough energy behind it, it can actually arc over the gap and connect the current. And that's what creates that kind of, sparking, that like lightning effect between wiring sometimes. That's what's happening. I thought that was actually quite a good point by one of the commenters. So that's why I'm including it now in this preamble to this video. So we can do two things there. We can either put the wiring in place so that the current is no longer impeded and can flow freely, or we can increase the current, the power behind the current, so strong that you can simply arc over that gap. Power. Spiritual power. Spiritual fire. So, we can do that. Sometimes it's a gap in the knowledge, and that's what we hope to plug with this spiritual bleach right here. And other times it's just a thin veil that is created by the mind. The mind is very adept, very subtle and very sneaky, and can create these very thin veils that prevent us from seeing the truth, prevent us from seeing the light. These are often in the form of beliefs, delusions. So just as a thin layer of cloud can actually block out almost all of the light from the sun, you think about how bright and how powerful the sun is, and all it takes is this very thin veil of water vapor to prevent the light of the sun from reaching the earth. So it appears to us down here as though it's a dark day. We cannot see the sun. But the truth is, the sun is still there, shining as brightly as it has always shone. It's just that it is temporarily veiled. So, in that instance, the spiritual bleach right here burns through those delusions and those persistent false beliefs that are created by the mind, the ego-identified mind. Today's blockage is related to this phenomena of having these glimpses of true awakening, having profound and powerful experiences, insights, intuitions, and feeling the power of the infinite universal consciousness flood through the body, that peace, that total serenity, that profound, auspicious, moment-to-moment recognition of the presence of being. Having that experience for some time, and then losing it. It is strange how this happens, how we can have such profound experiences of seeing the pure truth. You might have this for days, weeks, months, even years. And then all of a sudden, you just realize that you're still stuck also in these mind-identified patterns. You're still all up in your head. You are still all up in the narrative. You have identified once again as solely and purely the individual body-mind. You were in the full expansiveness. You were in the open, empty space. And man, those days, right? Those days where it's just all is well. Everything is in hand. And you can see so clearly the truth. And this truth, which is, just to be clear, that it turns out you are not the individual body-mind after all. That was a belief, a delusion. Actually, you are the consciousness that is aware of the individual body-mind. And that consciousness does not actually arise within the body. So the consciousness that is aware of the body is not originated by the body. Rather, the body, mind, and entirety of your experience of life arises within consciousness. And you not only understand this intellectually, but you feel it. You really feel it. And so it is with no small amount of chagrin, it is with no small amount of annoyance and frustration that you find, perhaps suddenly or perhaps subtly over a period of weeks, you go, hang on. What happened to that peace that I was feeling? I thought I was past this. When some old pattern of behavior, some old pattern of perception, some old pattern of perceiving things has reared its ugly head once again, and you find yourself caught up in those stressful, frantic narratives that are riddled with anxiety and stress and turmoil and chaos. And it feels even worse now because you have tasted peace, because you have tasted serenity. You have shifted from that open, pure expansiveness and now arrived with a jolt right back into that ego identification. And this is a blockage because we find ourselves asking, rightly so, rightly questioning, how do I make this permanent? So that's the blockage I want to talk on today, is how to make the understanding permanent regardless of any of the situations or circumstances that you find yourself in. Because often we find that we may be feeling quite peaceful, we may be feeling quite liberated and in that awakened state, but we also happen to be in a situation or scenario that is conducive to that. So let's say it's the weekend or you're on holiday, you just have space that day. You had the space in the morning to meditate and ground yourself. You had you're not getting that many messages through on your phone, so you're not getting pulled into these thought streams and narratives. Maybe you just have the day to yourself to really be immersed in the presence of being. And it's only when the situation and circumstance is a little more chaotic and filled with noise and lots of emotional noise as well. There's lots of people around, and maybe the people that really trigger those strong emotions in you. So maybe over the holiday season, such as Christmas or something like that, you find yourself, you cannot help but get pulled back in to that old habitual narrative. So this is a blockage, because you will find that these situations and scenarios will keep happening. The answer isn't to simply disengage from the world entirely. You can do that. You could do that. If that's your path, then that's your path. That's great, right? Go be a hermit. Go be a monk. That's great. But I would suggest that in the majority of cases, that is not practical or reasonable. Many people have families to take care of, for example. Or maybe you have a job that you are invested in. I don't want to leave this job. Despite the fact it stresses me out, I chose this job for a reason. I'm called to do this. I can't just leave this. I cannot just disengage from everything. Furthermore to that, disengaging, going no contact and ignoring situations, in some ways is still engaging with it. I'll have to explain that one at another time. So, we need to burn through this blockage, because those situations and scenarios are likely to continue happening, and we don't always have the luxury of the peace, the quiet, and the serenity that is conducive to this deeper contemplation and to recognizing experientially, which is crucial, the truth of existence, which is that you are the presence of awareness. You're not the narrative, you're not the body, you're not the mind, you're not all these stories, you're not your actions, your behaviors, your words, your thoughts, your thinking, you're none of that. And you never were. You are the consciousness that is aware of all those things. Sometimes we need that space in order to fully be with that. The moment you're around people, and they are committed to pulling you out of your peace. Sad to say it. So, how are we going to burn through this blockage right now? And let's do this. Let's do this. Now, this is going to be a long video. Okay? I've tried to make them as short as I can. I really have condensed years and years and years into as short a time as possible, but there is no way around it on this one. This is going to be a long video, so bear with me. We're going to get through this together, right? To the end. To the bitter end. So, that's just right out of the gate. I've made this as short as possible. And you know that I love my analogies. Analogies and metaphors have such a profound explanatory power. So let's dive into a few metaphors right here. And the way that we are going to understand how to make this awakening, the peace, permanent, is through understanding how optical illusions work, visual illusions work. The clues are everywhere. I have said this many times, and many would agree that the clues are in nature around us everywhere, and the clues are in the body, the way the body works, and the clues are in our own mechanisms of perception. The clues are also in all of our stories and narratives. The clues to the truth of reality are all around us. All we have to do is develop the intuition to be able to receive these clues. So to give a few examples here, and the main one we're going to be focusing on is optical illusions. But to give some examples of other clues that we find, one of my favorites in nature is the moon. The moon. Because how things appear is not necessarily how they are. So the reality of a situation isn't always how it would appear when we observe that situation. And when we observe something's apparent reality, we find it is often the appearance doesn't inherently have the truth of the nature of the reality of what we're seeing. Just from the appearance alone, we need an added bit of intuition, we need an added bit of insight, we need an added bit of knowledge in order to understand something's true nature. So with the moon, we can see moonlight, and it appears as though the moon is generating its own light. That's exactly how it appears when we observe it in the night sky. But we know that the moon does not have a source of light. Moonlight, the phenomena we observe as moonlight, is actually sunlight. It's actually the light of the sun bouncing off that pure white radiant surface of the moon, and it shines down. So it appears that the moon is shining. Actually, the moon is reflecting. How is this a clue to the nature of consciousness? Well, it appears as though the body and mind is generating its own awareness, is generating its own consciousness, but we find that actually consciousness is everywhere, shining upon the body-mind. So it appears consciousness is shining from the body and mind, but it is actually more akin to a reflection. This just happens to be the individual body-mind experience that consciousness is currently having. So the moon is a beautiful analogy. That's one analogy in nature. We find these clues everywhere. So, how about some of the clues that we find that are a bit more subtle, a bit more refined than that? And one that's often overlooked is these curious tricks of our own perception. The first one I'd like to look at right here is time dilation. The curious phenomena, the curious errors in our perception when it relates to time. And this is a clue that there is no such thing as time. We made it up. We made it up. There's no such thing as time. It's a concept. Humans came up with it as a method to organize and understand the perceived changes in the world around us. We came up with time. It is not inherent to reality. We added it after. Reality is just always now. We came up with this concept of time. And the clue to the truth of this is found in the fact that our perception of time is constantly off. If time was constant, wouldn't our perception of time also be constant, be consistent, wouldn't it remain the same throughout our entire lives at all time? If time is a constant thing, like a ticking clock, which is how we really like it, right? Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. We love that, especially us yang identified, neocortex identified people, such as me. No, I want things all nice and ordered. I like my universe all categorized up, please. Thank you very much. If that really was the reality of nature, if that was how things actually worked, wouldn't our perception of time be consistent? And you might go, man, Corin, my perception of time is consistent, I think you'll find. Really? How did you experience time when you were a child? Can you remember when an hour felt like a whole day? An hour felt like a huge amount of time. And as you get older, hours pass like minutes. When you were a child, a year seemed like an entire lifetime. And you experienced this. You experienced this. It wasn't a concept. You experienced this. So the difference between how a child experiences time and how an adult experiences time is completely different. That is one of the clues that there's no actual such thing as time. Totally, our perception and concepts are completely malleable, totally down to interpretation. We also have things like time flies when you're enjoying yourself, right? Such as when I'm doing these videos, time absolutely flies. Feels like it only takes a couple of minutes, and then I look backwards and I'm like, wow, I was just... I was banging on for over an hour. Oh, those poor viewers. Thanks for watching, by the way. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and memberships are available. And all of that spiel. Anyway, time flies when you're enjoying yourself. You ever notice that? You're having a good time? The hours fly by. The weekend goes by in the blink of an eye. Then Monday morning, those first 2 hours... Bro, do they drag on. Perception. Time hasn't changed because there's no such thing. The nature of reality hasn't changed. What changed? Perception. That's it. So in the awakening, we are no longer trapped. We are no longer constrained. We are no longer constricted. We are no longer deluded by our own perceptions. Our own perceptions have revealed themselves to be a very inferior mechanism by which we understand reality. Perception won't help you to understand reality. Man. Deja vu, that's another one. Feel like you've done this before? Hang on a minute, I'm getting such deja vu right now. This is, I've had exactly this before. This exact thing has happened before. Right? Now, it's undeniable. If you've ever had the experience of deja vu, it is profoundly powerful. Even the most scientifically minded, materialist, science, neocortex, no, everything needs to be understood by cognition alone. Even that person, when they experience deja vu, they may interpret it differently to how somebody else might interpret it, but they cannot deny how powerful and profound that experience feels. Deja vu, it is a trick of perception. In the Matrix, Neo sees that cat, doesn't he? In the Matrix, the deja vu is when the machine, when the illusion changes something, and it kind of, there's a glitch. Deja vu is a glitch in the Matrix. I don't think that's exactly true. It's more it's a glitch in perception. A glitch in perception that temporarily reveals the truth of reality. Those are some of the clues as to the nature of reality in our perception. But what is the one that I would like to focus on today and utilize as the teaching point that will allow you to come to the awakened state permanently? The optical illusion. I'm going to use 3 very famous examples, and because I've figured out how to use my video editing software now, it only took me a few months, I'm going to put some pictures up, which will also give you a break from staring at my mug, right? Lucky you. So the first one is I'll put it up now. Future Corin, run it. So, this picture right here is the young lady who, if you look at it and can see it, you will see an old lady. And you can switch between the two. Okay, this is the first optical illusion. This is a classic. This is an absolute classic. This is a well-known one. You may have seen it before. If you haven't seen it yet, this may take some figuring out. So I'll leave it up for a little while right here. Can you see the young lady? And now can you see the old lady? I'll give you a clue. The old lady, it's just a face. The young lady is kind of looking away and you can see her neck and she has a shawl. But the old lady, if you look at the young lady's ear, it becomes an eye and then you see the old lady. Right? Young to old in the blink of an eye. Clues are everywhere, team. Right? So that's the first one right there. Classic. Absolute classic. You know the ones I mean, these optical illusions. The next one, run it right here, Corin, is the rabbit and the duck. I think this one's a little bit easier. I saw this one a lot quicker. I was stumped on the young lady, old lady one for a very long time. But this next one, the rabbit and the duck, another absolute classic. You see? There's a rabbit and a duck. Here's the clue. The duck is facing to the left. The rabbit is facing kind of upwards. Right? The duck and the rabbit follow the white rabbit, right? To Wonderland. And the last one, which is the one I'm going to focus on for the remainder of this video, is the faces and the vase. Put it up here. The faces and the vase. Now you can see either two faces looking at each other in profile, or you can see the vase in the middle. Those are the optical illusions. Those are the classics, okay? Now, how can these things, the trick of perception that is the optical illusion, how can this help us to remain in a permanent, awakened, enlightened state and prevent this back and forth from happening? Well, there's a few things that make the optical illusion a perfect analogy for awakening. Firstly, we realize it's actually a shift in perception. A shift in perception. So, in awakening, you begin, as most people, as they begin to learn about awakening and enlightenment, finding inner peace, whatever you want to call it, we begin with a certain way of perceiving the world. And that is when we first see the optical illusion, that is what we see, and it is undeniable, right? And so we tend to habitually, the way we've been conditioned and the way that everything really seems to appear, is that, my consciousness is generated by the brain or by the body. It is localized entirely within this one singular experience. And so therefore my consciousness shares the limitations of this individual body-mind. It was born, it lives, and then it dies. And when it dies, it's going to be gone. It's over, right? And I wasn't here before this individual body-mind. That's the first part. That is when we first see the optical illusion. That's how it appears. When we have the brief glimpse of awakening, you suddenly see the other way of perceiving things. You see the other way of seeing it, which is that, the consciousness isn't generated by the body and mind. The consciousness is always here. The consciousness is permanent, infinite, universal. It was not born and it will not die. There is no time. It is only ever now. And consciousness is the only constant through everything. It is not limited by perception. It is not limited by experience. And that's when you realize, what appeared to be the individual body and mind wasn't an individual body-mind at all. What it was is simply the infinite universal consciousness having a finite temporary experience. It kind of has to do this in order to have an experience at all. How can it have an experience unless it has some kind of perceiving faculties in order to receive that experience? Right? And in order to have those perceiving faculties, they have to be limited in some way. It has to divide itself into object-subject relationship. Otherwise, there's no experience. It needs object-subject in order to have the experience temporarily. Once we collapse the object-subject relationship, that's when, the truth of experience is revealed, and, what a relief that is. So that's how the optical illusion forms a perfect analogy for awakening. You were seeing it one way, and now you can see it, you see the other side of things as well. You see the other image. Now there's some things that make the optical illusion just get more and more vivid as an analogy. So bear with me, because we're really going to get into this right here. We're really going to, if you are serious about awakening, if you are sincere about enlightenment, if you really truly wish to be rid of suffering, you wish to be rid of the limitations of your narrative, if you're fed up with your own personal individual narrative, we got to lock in right here. Lock in. So bear with me. There are three things that make the optical illusion a perfect analogy for awakening. Firstly, before you saw the two things. So let's say you can see the young lady in that first one. Let's say you can see the young lady in that first one. Just take the gloves off a second there, right? And this happened to me, and somebody says, oh, there's two images there. You could either see the young lady, who's sort of looking away from the camera sort of thing, and there's an old lady in there as well. And I was looking at that, and I was like, nah. I can see the young lady, definitely. Quite a nice young lady, right? So I can see that, for sure. Cannot see the old lady. And even, right, to the point of doubting the person who points out. Because this happens too, right? Somebody comes along, points out the two things, but we remain firmly convinced that you can only see the one image. No, sorry. So what you remain firmly convinced of is that there is only one image. You are convinced, no, there is no old lady in that picture. That this is a picture of a young lady. There is no picture of the old lady. So that is like the seeker who is firmly convinced they are the individual body and mind. Firmly convinced. No, consciousness arises in the brain. This other thing you're telling me to see, infinite universal consciousness, nah, it's not there. It's not in the image. It doesn't exist in reality. The only, no matter how much somebody tells you, no, there's another image. There's two images here. There's two ways of looking at this image. Even if somebody comes along and points that out, right? And that, in this analogy, that's the spiritual teacher, or perhaps the spiritual teaching assistant, right? Who comes along and says, look, there's two images here. Yes, there's the individual body-mind experience and all those narratives. That's there, sure. But look at things from the infinite universal consciousness perspective, right? Someone comes along and says that. But people are so firmly convinced that there is only the one image that people look at you like you're crazy. When you say, no, there's two images. People look at you like you're bananas. They're about to press the panic button, get you sent off to the old loony bin, right? That's how the agents in the Matrix works. That is how powerful the ego-identified mind subtly keeps everyone stuck in the illusory reality, the Maya. The wheel of samsara. It is kept by. In the Matrix, have you ever noticed how the agents kind of spawn in through people? The agents can take over any body. Anyway, that's a story for another time. But the point is, before you've seen both images, you can only see one. Now, this isn't to be judgmental, because you can't help that. You can't help that that's the only way that you see things. So there's no point in saying, oh, I'm such an idiot for not seeing it. You can't help it. The first time you see that image, the young lady, the old lady, the rabbit, the duck, the first time you see what you see, right? That is how things appear. That is how things appear. Sorry, team. I've got a bit of a dry mouth here, a bit of paste mouth, so excuse me for a second while I drink this very high-end, very expensive energy drink. Not product placement. I just enjoy Euro Shopper original energy drink. They can sponsor me if they want. But for 59p a can, wow, I've gotten way off track. This is not product placement. I just noticed I have a very pasty mouth that's making my noise click. Just bear with me one moment. Technical errors here. Don't press that panic button, get me sent to the loony bin right now. Maybe I'll pop an advert in here. There you go. What a flawless segue that is. Delicious. Filled with energy and for just 59p a can. You can't go wrong. So, when you can see one image in the optical illusion, you cannot see the other side of it, no matter how much somebody points it out. They can only point to what you should be looking for. The shift happens through a strange process, and all of a sudden, you see it. Dang! And you do feel like a little bit of an idiot, because now you can see it so clearly. You can see it staring you in the face. It is so obvious now that there is both the young lady and the old lady in the same image. You can see it so clearly. You can now see there is the duck and the rabbit. You can see this so clearly, so clearly. And you see that and you go, ooh, how did I not see this before? So this is what happens as you come into the awakening, as you come into enlightenment. You go, whoa, I get it now. I get it, right? I can see this now. So now you can see both sides of it. And you do give it a little bit of a facepalm when you're like, how did I not see that before? Well, you didn't see it before because that is not how it appears, right? It really isn't. And it's not like everyone's walking around and they've seen this magic eye. If you come into glimpses of awakening and enlightenment, you are in the vast minority. 99.99% of people will never see this optical illusion for what it is. They just won't. But once you see it through it's thanks in part to that annoying person who kept pointing it out and wouldn't let you like just say, no, it's just this image, that's it, that's all there is. Somebody was persistent in telling you, no, look at it from the other perspective. And then you might say, oh, thanks, to the person who was, oh, thanks for pointing that out. So now you can see both, okay? Now, here is what makes this truly, truly powerful. Once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Cheers. Oh, refreshing. Once you've seen it, you can't unsee it, right? I'm going to put that picture back up. I'm giving myself more work here, but I'm going to put that picture. Let's go back. Let's go use the old lady, young lady image. I said I was going to use the one with the vase and the faces, but actually I'm starting to wonder if maybe the young lady, old lady is a more powerful one because it's harder to see. It's a more difficult optical illusion. Now, you can see, hopefully by this point, the old lady and the young lady. If not, this is a very famous optical illusion, by the way, so you can Google it and it can help guide you to seeing it clearly. And once you've seen it, now, I'm going to challenge you right here. Here's a little exercise that we can do right here. You can pause the video on the image or whatever. Now that once you've seen both, okay? So firstly, get to the point where you've seen both, okay? Once we're there, go back to that image, look at that image, and now try as hard as you can to go back to only seeing one. Go back to the previous ignorant state. Go back to before you saw it. Go back to before then. Go back to before you realized the truth hidden in the image. Go back to that time. Stop seeing the old lady. Only see the young lady. Only see that. Don't see both. Don't switch between the two. Go back. Go back to the ignorant state. You can't! You can't. It can't be done. Once it has been seen, you cannot unsee it. This is why it is crucially important to have direct spiritual experience, kensho, to have experientially the truth of consciousness. It's important because once you've seen the truth, you can't unsee it. So, what is happening then when we have had these recognitions, we've had the Kensho, we've had the experience, and yet I keep getting pulled back into narratives and suffering? Well, here's the third curious thing about the optical illusion. You can switch between the two. Yummy. You can switch between the two. So let's use the vase and the faces. Okay, you know this one, you can see the faces looking at each other, but if you look in the middle, you see the vase, right? And you find that you can, despite the fact you now know and have experienced that there are two images, you can still, if you choose to, switch between which one you're predominantly looking at. Try this now. If you've ever had the spiritual experience, if you're watching this video, you've probably had these glimpses. So do this now. And here, right here, is the power of this spiritual bleach, right? This exercise right here is like grinding. I don't know why pestle and mortar came to mind, but this is, now we are grinding through that blockage, all right? This is laying down the cable, right? This is sparking and arcing over that gap. This is burning away the clouds that block out the sun. Here's how we do it. Allow yourself a little freedom here. The beautiful thing about truth is that it stays true, okay? The truth stays true. So it doesn't matter where your perception goes, really, ultimately. The truth isn't going anywhere. The truth is not going anywhere. It is as true now as it has ever been and will always be. So let yourself off the hook a little, and let's have a little adventure in consciousness. Let's have a little play in the playground of this infinite universal consciousness and in the playground of the Maya. Let's just start switching between the two. Ego identified. Yes, I am Corinne Bryant. Yes, the spiritual teacher, personal trainer. I've got all that stuff, all of that, the back injury thing and all of that. Yes, I'm going to fully identify here now as, yes, I am this individual body-mind. I am a biological entity out of which consciousness arises, and one day I will be 6 feet underground and pushing up the daisies. I will be brown bread, which is UK rhyming slang for dead. Brown bread. I will be browners, as they say, and upon that moment that I am browners, my consciousness will cease. Okay, so I can lock into that. I can see it from that perspective. Sure, I can go like that. And now I'm going to switch. We're going to see things from the other perspective. Hang on. I am the infinite universal consciousness. It is only ever now. There is no such thing as time. And just because I am aware of a body and a mind, that doesn't mean I am the body and mind. As far as I have ever experienced, my experience has always been here. I can't remember a time before this body was born. How could I? Experience is constant, permanent, and infinite. As the consciousness, as the conscious awareness, I have observed many changes within this localized experience that this individual body-mind seems to be having. I have always been present to observe all of that, and yet I have never been mixed up and tied up in any of that. There is no past, there is no story, there is no future, there is no birth, no change, no death, Ajatavada. There is nothing. This entire apparent illusory reality. was just an appearance, an illusion, a powerful illusion, an illusion filled with beauty, love, joy, and also the depth of immense suffering, but an illusion nonetheless. Now, I much prefer that way of seeing things. That's a much more enjoyable way of seeing things. And now I can switch back. Okay? Let's switch back into ego identification. And the more you do this little switch, this little back and forth, the more you dismantle the hook that keeps you trapped in the maya, in the illusion. You begin to erode your belief in the validity of egoic delusion. You erode your belief in the validity of egoic delusion when you can see both sides. And just as in the optical illusion, you can't unsee it, keep switching back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until the whole process just becomes kind of boring, right? And then you no longer feel like switching back and forth. You just stay in the more enjoyable of the two. Because why wouldn't you, right? So you can switch back and forth, and so switch back and forth. With the optical illusion, the faces in the vase, keep switching back and forth until that whole process becomes effortless. You can just see it, unsee it, see it, unsee it, see it, unsee it. And that's something you can do in spiritual awakening. So don't be frustrated if you keep getting caught back up in the ego identification. Don't get frustrated by that. It's actually quite a profound opportunity to continue to erode the egoic belief, to erode the attachments. It's an opportunity as you shift back and forth. And with each shift, we just dismantle a bit more of that narrative structure that keeps you locked in turmoil, chaos, and suffering. The ego is the interface between the truth and the matrix, right? You know, they plug that thing in the back of their head in the matrix. That's the ego, the interface between the two. Remove the interface and you are no longer trapped in the matrix. Unplug. And we do that by switching back and forth. Now, how then, because after switching back and forth for a while, zoom the picture out even further and you get to this amazing point where you can see both simultaneously. You can see both. The old lady and the young lady at the same time. You no longer switch between the two. You can see them both at the same time. Let me put up all three optical illusions now. And in each of those, the more you gaze upon them, the more you understand them, the more you are relentless in your pure, clear observation of these images, the more that this gestalt starts to happen. A gestalt means to observe the totality of something, how all of those things work together to create the deeper, overall, broader whole. Everything works together to create this gestalt. So, at a certain point, you can see both simultaneously, and that is the point we want to get to so that we can remain established in the permanent bliss and peace of being. How are we going to do that? So firstly, now we understand that just because something appears a certain way, that does not mean the way that it appears is the truth of the nature of its reality. just as the moonlight, and just as with the optical illusion, it is also exactly the same when it comes to your own consciousness, your own experience of being. And we can do this right now. I understand the irony that I use a lot of concepts, I use a lot of cognition, I use a lot of words in order to create kind of these mind things going on, and ultimately we're trying to step away from the mind. Okay, so now let's go into experiential. Let's get into this right here. We need to experience the other side of things. So let's do it. Right now, just become aware of your current experience. Now we become aware of the experience, but do not put any concept upon the experience. Just remain as the observer of experience. You will notice the mind, in its habitual activity, wants to label, wants to categorize, wants to analyze, wants to interpret. Don't go to that stage. Just remain as the observer. Just remain as the observer. Observe your current experience. And do not make any distinctions, do not categorize anything, do not go to any concept. Just be aware of your experience now. Recognize that you are equally aware of every aspect of your experience. You do not have more awareness in your thoughts and less awareness in the sensations of your hand. You are equally aware of both. Consciousness does not weight one thing as more important than any other. You are equally aware of all facets of your experience. So go to the experience, but do not analyze anything. Do not create interpretation or opinion, just be aware of the experience. And right here, deeply into it, understanding. Synchronicity. A lady in a car just drove past and she looks exactly like the image in the optical illusion, exactly like it. Synchronicity. Anyway, aware of your experience now. No interpretation, no opinion, no analysis, nothing. Just what is. You are equally aware of all facets and aspects of your experience. Just be the observation and the awareness. And now, just a gentle inquiry into, did your bodily sensations and thoughts ever actually say, I generate consciousness? Or is that something you were taught? Did an apparent external influence condition you into believing that your biology, your brain, your body created consciousness? And just in the pure, raw observation, the awareness of body and mind, is there anything within the sensations, is there anything within the experience of being that inherently suggests it is generating or creating consciousness? is the idea that consciousness is generated by the brain a conclusion that you arrived at yourself, or is it something that was taught to you? Is that external information that was transmitted into you? Because if we go back, if we strip everything away, strip away all concepts, all words, all learning, the truth of reality is your experience as you're experiencing it now. This is purely logical and rational, right? Your experience of life is an experience, and you're experiencing it now. There's no evidence to suggest that consciousness is generated by the brain or the body. These are concepts, words and images, methods that you're taught. But inherent to your experience, did the body ever say, I am consciousness? Did the body and mind ever say, I am you? Or was that added later? And how many of our beliefs are purely just assumptions? Assumptions based on the way something appears. Now, it's incredibly convincing. The illusion is incredibly convincing. Because it's not only an optical illusion, like with the moon or like with the optical illusions that we've been studying here today in this lesson. It's not just the optical. It also is contained in the sensations in the body, and we feel pain, we feel biological urges. So it's not just an optical illusion, but it's that too. It is all facets of experience, and the way it appears, sure, 100%, it appears as though you are an individual body and mind, subject to the limitations of the individual body and mind. That you are an individual body-mind that must navigate around this world afraid, seeking to do something, seeking to achieve something, seeking to have something, seeking to avoid something, seeking to obtain something. That is how it appears. But if we strip things back to the experience of reality as it is now, all of those things are just a story. Stories, narratives, concepts, that's all. So remaining in the truth of your raw, pure experience now, without concept, you find that there is a tremendous amount of peace in the understanding that you are the awareness of experience, you are not the experience itself. Now, this will really bake your noodle. Be aware of the totality of your current experience in the now. Just be aware of it. Bodily sensation, mind, all of that. And now become equally aware of the space around your body that you can't feel. Again, be aware of the sensations of the body, even be aware of the thoughts and emotions in the mind, be aware of your sense perceptions, but just open to include the space around the body, which could be a meter in front of you, or 10,000 light years in front of you. It doesn't really matter, because there's no such thing as distance. Distance is a concept too. So a meter in front, stretching all the way out to 100 light years out in front. And you can't feel anything in that area, right? You can't feel anything in that space. There is an absence of sensation. So you're also aware of the sensations in the body and mind and the perceptions, but now open to expand, include that space in which there's a total absence of all perception, a total absence of all sensation. Just expand, expand, expand. This is a powerful meditation in its own right. You could awaken permanently just through this meditation in itself. Just expand to include everything you can't feel. Can't feel anything? Well, that's kind of peaceful, right? That's kind of serene. It's kind of nice, right? Absence. Pure, clear, silent, void. Free of pain, right? That space. And you've expanded your awareness to include that. Freedom from pain. Expand and reach into that in your consciousness. And you might think, well, isn't that evidence that there is an absence of awareness? No, we're going to switch the optical illusion here. It is not the absence of awareness. That void space is awareness of absence. So extend consciousness into the awareness of absence, and now you are experiencing the other side of the optical illusion. So just keep focusing attention on the awareness of absence, the void space that is free from suffering, that is free from pain, that is free from emotional suffering, physical suffering, that empty, aware space that exists all around the body that you are aware of. If you weren't aware of it, how would you know that there is an absence of sensation there? How can you know that? How do you know that? You do know that. How? How can you know that unless there is an awareness of it? Even if what you're aware of is a void, that is still awareness. That is awareness. You are aware of the absence. Freedom from suffering, freedom from turmoil and chaos. It's silent. Silence. In all directions, everywhere, all around, infinitely expanding outwards. It doesn't end. Where could it end? It's void of endings. What's another word for void of endings? Infinite. Infinite, not finite. It's infinite. Eternal. It goes on forever. Expand your consciousness into that empty void. Stay there a while, and now you're seeing, directly experiencing the other side of the optical illusion. Oh, what a relief. And now, switch back to the sensations in the body and mind. Ah, yes, all of those thoughts and feelings, that narrative. Oh, bruh. Locked in to that constricted narrative again. Dang. Thought I was free of this. Oh, thought this was over. I thought, what happened to the peace? Okay, now we've gone back to seeing the appearances in the old way of looking at things. And now let's switch back. Open, empty absence. The void around you. Awareness of absence. Just spend some time in the awareness of absence. The awareness of the total, pure, clear, open, empty, silent space. Free of images. Free of concepts. Free of thought. Switch between the two for a while. And then, ultimately, and this is getting to the top of the mountain, right? All of these paths are just different ways to the top of the mountain, but here is how we take the ski lift right to the top, okay? Now that we're observing between the two, remain in that fully elevated state that is observing even the switching between the two. Now, if you're in the observing space that is able to observe the switching between the two, you are now liberated from the switching between the two. You're seeing the gestalt, both images together at the same time. You are observing this from the space that is not subject to the switching. And if you are in the space that is not subject to the switching between the two, to the getting it and then losing it, you are now permanently established in the awakened state. You're welcome. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and channel memberships are available, or you can donate. Cheers. Sorry, I shouldn't joke. I know I joke around a lot, and I know that people are suffering with some very serious stuff, so I know I shouldn't joke, but I can't help it. I just enjoy teaching. So, in the fully expanded observation state that can actually observe the switching between these so-called awakened states and so-called egoic mind-identified states, you are now fully open, empty to observe everything, and you are permanently established in the awakening. Now, this will eventually just bring you to total liberation. You might already be there, all right? So, just to ensure that you don't get hooked and dragged back in, there is one final point that I need to make. And to illustrate this, I just want to recount the story of the final words of U.G. Krishnamurti, a famous, amazing guru, teacher, whatever you want to say, however you want to label that, but it doesn't actually matter. U.G. Krishnamurti is one of the greats, right? If not the greatest to ever do it, the GOAT, right? But he was remarkably enlightened and awakened and very playful, and he awoke and enlightened many, many beings. And he had a huge following. And on his deathbed, as he was rapidly approaching he was about to leave his body, as that temporary finite body mind was drawing to a close, one of his followers said, before you go, everyone was grieving already, everyone was sad that he was going to go, and that how terrible it was that this teacher is going to depart from the apparent illusory world. They said, do you have one final teaching for us? What is there? Is there some teaching that is the true secret to your enlightenment? Is there a teaching that is the secret to your permanent liberation? And U.G. Krishnamurti said, yes, there is. And all the followers gathered round, waiting for this profound insight. And he said, the secret is, I don't mind what happens. Now, as simple as that is, and kind of amusing as that is, and there's hidden meanings in that singular line as well, don't mind what happens. That is what will erode that final hook. Because we observe all of this experience from the fully elevated space, but we still find that I prefer some experiences to others. But this is where we must practice the true depth of spiritual maturity and emotional maturity. Just treat all experience equally. Don't mind what happens. Because now, from the fully elevated state, no, it's not a state, because it's permanent. States come and go. It's not a state. From the fully elevated position, the fully elevated perspective, now, finally, we are able to observe all experience equally. And therein lies the peace and bliss that we have been missing. Because naturally, well, we are happy to feel the peace and bliss when it's Sunday morning and we're going through a nice stroll through the forest. You can hear the birds tweeting, there's nobody around. Nice, cool, fresh, crisp air. And, yes, I have the awakening here. And now I feel at peace here. Sure. But we might not feel quite so at peace when it's 2 a.m. in the morning and you've had to drive someone to accident and emergency, the emergency room, because they're sick or hurt. And you're exhausted. There's traffic. The tyre blows. You've got to get the ambulance there. The waiting room's full. You're desperately trying to get help for one of your loved ones. The situation is intense. The emotions are strong. And before awakening, you would say, how on earth could I be at peace in that situation? Well, herein lies the true power. Herein lies the power of this perspective. When you observe all experience equally, from the fully zoomed out perspective that can observe the entirety of the Gestalt, the entirety of all things, you simply don't mind what happens. Now, that's not to say that you drive the person to A&E with a big smile on your face and la 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 la, oh, I feel so awakened. That wouldn't help. That would actually be egoic. You're trying desperately to not feel an emotion. That's not how it works. In observation is free to allow for all emotions. You're very concerned for your loved one. Of course you are. This is a horrible situation. You're free to feel the horror of the situation. You're free to feel the horror of the situation, but you don't mind. So you're still locked in. You engage all of your cognitive faculties to ensure that you can get the best care for your loved one. But because you're in the awakened position, you're not panicking, you're not frantic, you're not adding to the stress and turmoil of the situation. You are the space in which the entire situation is perfectly free to unfold. You will then be able to speak calmly and reasonably, to reassure, to soothe, to show sympathy with the person that you're trying to help. You will demonstrate the calm assuredness of your actions, of your words. You will be able, and that will reassure your loved one to a great extent. You will be able to deal with the medical professionals rationally and reasonably. You will be able to communicate the precise detail of what exactly is happening, and you're not angry, you're not frustrated, because if you're angry, frustrated, and in stress and turmoil yourself, you will not be able to engage with the medical professionals in the most optimal, efficient, and effective way. And because you're frantic and stressed, that will make the patient, your loved one, more frantic and stressed, and the misery and turmoil will be amplified tenfold. But from the awakened position, from the position of observation, you watch all of this unfold. You even watch, wow, my own actions and behaviors here are just moment to moment the correct behavior. I cannot change this situation any more than I am trying to. This occurrence is happening. This experience is happening. There's no resistance to this experience. This experience is happening. I'm behaving as best I can. And all is well. Thy will be done. Thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. It is not to say that you don't feel the negative, afflictive emotions from that situation, but it is to say that you are observing the negative, afflictive emotions from a place of peace. All experience is made of awareness, and all awareness is always at peace. So what is the secret to stop the back and forthing? I don't mind what happens. Now, if you can find peace even in that situation, which is probably as close to a hellish situation as you can get in common experience. There are more extreme examples, obviously, but that's just one of them. If you can remain at peace even in that, then you can remain at peace even when it's Monday morning and you're going to work and you're dreading the week, right? But now you're at peace. And because you're not identified with the ego mind, you have removed all of the secondary suffering, all of the suffering that is contained within the story, which is most of it. And all of a sudden, it's not Monday morning and you're dreading the entire week, because there's no such thing as time. In the moment, you are just on the train, looking out the window, and there's nothing wrong with that. All is well. That is the peace of awakening, and that is how to stop the back and forth between the two. Because you no longer have that narrative, when you're on the train to work without the story, you realize deeply that this freedom, this liberation, is freedom from the person. It is not freedom for the person. It is freedom from the person. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That is how the optical illusions is the perfect analogy for awakening. I think that's everything I have for this episode of Spiritual Bleach. Team, thank you so much for listening. I hope some of that is useful. I hope some of that is helpful. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe on your way out. And I have channel memberships on one of these buttons down here, there I believe. And if you join the channel membership for the small monthly subscription, you can gain access to my exclusive guided meditations and talks, which are based on Advaita. No birth, no change, no death. You also gain access to my Discord chat rooms, in which we discuss all things awakening and healing, and also the things to do with the emotion work and the sobriety and all of those things that I speak about. Also, or it's just quite nice to have a chat with like-minded individuals. So that's everything, team. Thank you so much for listening. Take care, be well, and stay present.